Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tabs on Tap. I'm Tabitha Hassell. Happy Friday. No, there was no sound of that video. It's not a technical issue, but that was complete theater, wasn't it? Complete theater, absolute theater. We have so much to talk about today. It is unbelievable what we just watched. Everybody jumping up and down. It's like, why are you jumping up and down? Like, why? What's going on to where you feel like you have to jump up and down? It just doesn't make any sense to me. At this point, they had to have known there was nothing in those files, didn't they? Good morning, Dottie. Good morning, Allison. And I think I've got all my technical issues worked out, but I just want to warn you guys ahead of time. For some very strange reason, I'm having like some static. I don't know if you guys can hear it or if just I hear it. So I apologize in advance if you guys hear that. So I'm not really sure what's going on, but either way, we'll figure it out. Dottie says their dancing reminded me of the nurses and doctors during the shutdown. I'll tell you, nothing but disappointment. Nothing but disappointment that took place yesterday. But you know what? It wasn't really all that disappointing to me because I didn't expect them to release anything anyway. I really didn't, and I know a lot of you, Allison, are very optimistic, and I appreciate your optimism because we all need to have some optimism. But I knew that was never going to happen. I knew they were never going to release anything. The files they released, I've had those files for 5 years, so many of us have it. Trust me, it's not just me. Many people have had those files for 5 years. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot of things. And Allison, I'm with you. I was really hoping for more. I really had hoped that I was wrong and that they would have released some substantial information. And we're going to be talking about that today, probably at length, because we've been waiting for this day for so long, haven't we? For so long. And then we get nothing. We get absolutely nothing. And I don't understand it any more than you guys do. I don't know. We'll figure it out. If you notice, there's something wrong with my camera today. My face looks crooked, like I've had a stroke or something. But it is what it is. Good morning, Anne. How are you doing this morning? So those are some of the things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk pretty in depth about the Epstein situation. We're going to talk about what exactly is going on. Why did that happen? Why is it all theater? Why are we not learning any information? And of course, Pam Bondi putting some pretty tough parameters out there for this morning for the FBI office in New York City, the Southern District there. Allison says the biggest disappointment is that the corrupt Southern District of New York is hiding these files to subverting Trump's administration. That's disappointing, Allison, but to me, that's the second disappointment. And we're definitely going to be breaking that down. We're going to talk about gamers. How did the Biden administration go after the gamers? We all know people who are gamers. It might be your kids, nephews, nieces, whoever it might be you yourself. Well, they were after you. Trump moving closer and closer every day to those airstrikes against the cartels in Mexico. We're going to talk about that. Lots going on with the cartel. Some groundbreaking arrests that have taken place. Did we all know? Remember Pennsylvania shooter Thomas Crooks, right? Did he have a accomplice? Well, I think he probably did. I think we've all believed that from day one. Zelensky visiting the White House today. Keir Starmer from the UK there yesterday with the White House. They had the British flag upside down. I think that should tell us everything we need to know. Good morning, Tammy Jerry Hoover. Good morning, Kim. And FAA, we're going to talk about the FAA and trying to bring back some retired air traffic controllers. We've been trying to do that for quite some time now, but now Elon Musk has stepped in the mix. And we're going to talk about the FAA just a little bit, just because there's so much going on. We've got some clues as to why Obama is, making the money he's making. We're going to talk about the government funding terrorism. If you've been listening to my show, gosh, you could go back to 2012. I doubt any of you were listening to my show back then. It was a radio show. But I talked a lot back then about the government, the United States government funding terrorism all across the world. And I've continued to talk about that ever since then. But it's really hard to find evidence to prove that this is actually happening. People want to say, oh, that's not true. Our government, they don't fund terrorism. Yeah, they do. And not only do they fund terrorism, but they've been funding terrorism for a very long time. And you would think that these things just can't happen, but they do happen. And it's so frustrating to me, and I love seeing validation when it comes our way. And it's not often that we've had a belief system, for many years, and all of a sudden you find out, oh, guess what? It was true all along. All along we knew the truth. Good morning, Karen. And so, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I'm going to play a video here for you guys, and you're going to hear this excerpt. Now, I don't think I'm going to play the whole thing because it's about 5 minutes long. I don't have 5 minutes to spend on this, but we're going to listen to a little bit of it because I want you to understand what it is exactly our government was doing with our taxpayer dollars, why the world hates us. We're going to have to start accepting that the hatred we're feeling from around the world is our own fault. But all that's going to change. All that is going to change. No question about it. All right, so let's listen to just a few moments of this, and then we're going to move on. We're going to talk about Epstein quite a bit.
Mr. Roman, are you aware that we are sending $40 million a week to the Taliban?
Yes, sir.
Can you name other instances of foreign aid going to terrorist organizations?
We have assisted al-Shabaab in Somalia. There's been instances of the Hamzi network in Sudan, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Kataib al-Hezbollah, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams in Syria. Dozens of terror organizations have received indirect assistance from U.S. foreign aid.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the mechanisms in place that are to stop foreign aid from going to terrorist groups, and why are they not working if we have any in place?
Sure.
And I would note that these are, you notice, these are terrorist weaponry. You see some AKs, SKSs, some snipers, some clips, some clip carriers probably made in China, and I believe these are small landmines here beside right there.
Let's use Gaza as our case study. $2.1 billion in American taxpayers' money to Gaza since October 7th when Hamas invaded southern Israel. USAID money was going in terms of an emergency use authorization to try to go to parties that USAID formerly had a relationship with in the Gaza Strip. They had to have been vetted by OFAC. They should have been vetted against the special designated terror list from the State Department and from other Treasury organizations. Waivers were granted because they said that there was an emergency use to have that money come in to Gaza, thereby jettisoning the usual typical screening procedures. As a result, 90% of aid that was going from the United States by way of its agents in Gaza ended up in Hamas-controlled areas. And this is ridiculous. Essentially, what the U.S. assistance to Gaza did was underwrite the ability for Hamas to survive until the ceasefire was just passed a few weeks ago. There was no strategic thought for it, and there was no screening.
Seems like the emergency might have been armed terrorists to kill civilians. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate, and even more than that, Samantha Powers, the administrator for USAID, was intent on having Israel not be able to defend itself.
To not be able to defend it.
Correct.
Mr. Pramarak, is that correct? How do you say that? Pramarak? I got Burchett, man. Nobody gets mine right, so don't worry about it. What is it, Pramarak?
Perfect.
All right, thanks, brother. How did terrorists exploit our foreign aid loopholes?
Well, we have a lot of our international...
Can you pull your mic up? I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
You have international NGOs and UN agencies actively lobby here in Washington, D.C. against vetting policies that would prevent it. I was the senior vetting officer at USAID, and what we did...
Did you say United Nations is doing this? The UN?
Sure, everybody who's getting money lobbies here.
That they're lobbying against us. I'm sorry, Mr. Roman.
There's actually someone who used to work for one of those lobbies, the largest NGO lobby, Interaction. One of our co-witnesses here worked for them from 2018 to 2023. USAID effectively self-funds its own external private lobby that then goes back to Congress and asks for more money for USAID.
So the taxpayers fund this lobbyist who's working against American interests.
Correct.
Possibly killing our allies and possibly Americans.
They bring together groups in Washington that oversees work with groups that kill Americans.
Yeah, I don't need a flow chart to show that. I appreciate it. Do you think USA programs have been aligned with the national security interests of the U.S.?
No, they have not. They have actually helped China.
Mr. Roman?
No.
Okay. How do these programs compromise our national security, Mr. Premack?
They actually push China. They actually push much of the world towards China on the green energy agenda. They push people, ordinary people, billions of people towards China because of the resentment caused by our social re-engineering.
Are we being lobbied by these pro-communist China groups currently?
All right, you guys will have to go back and listen to that entire video. I can share that with you somewhere else. But I'll tell you what, good morning, Dustin, good morning, Karen. The reason why this video is so important, you may not even see the bombshell that it is that I see. It is telling us that here in the United States, our very own departments, I call it USAID, they call it USAID, whatever it is you want to call it, that they have been working against us. Your tax dollars, your taxpayer dollars, they're taking this money out of your check every week, 2 weeks when you get paid. And they're sending this tax money, not to mention every time you buy something, they're taking this tax money. And of course, when you pay your taxes, all of it, it's all going to the same place. And then they're taking this money and they're giving it to these different organizations to go against your interests. So they're using we've talked before about Obama. He funded Hamas. Trump stopped that program funding Hamas. He made sure he routed that money to the people, the Palestinian people who live there. Then, of course, Biden changed that policy, started funding Hamas again more directly, and they are using your money against you. I don't think people understand that. People are looking at all these Doge audits, and particularly Democrats, and they're saying, oh, this is crazy. They're cutting all these programs and they're cutting all this money out. Well, what they don't understand is there might be something that says it's a food bank or a charitable organization that provides aid to the most poverty-stricken. Let's say it could even be the Palestinian people. They're saying, oh, well, this provides food to the Palestinian people. Why would we cut that? Oh my gosh, we're going to starve these people to death. But what they don't realize is that, 10% of that $1 billion might go to actually feed these people, but the rest of it all goes to Hamas. That is the way it works. And it's not just there, it's taking place all across the world. We have funded terrorism for decades. I mean, for decades. And I wish people would wake up. I hope people go back. I'm going to post that video later, and I'll post it on Telegram, on Facebook, and on X. And I hope everybody has an opportunity to go back. There's a lot more. It's 5 minutes long, too long for me to play here. But it is so incredibly important for you to understand and to relay to other people who definitely don't get it, that it's not about cutting aid to people. It's not about harming people who are vulnerable in other countries or even here in our own country. It's about the fact that your tax dollars are being funneled into these programs that is used to assassinate people. It's used to promote terrorism. It's used to fund terrorism. It's used to fund the very people who want to cause us harm. And no one seems to understand that. It drives me insane. No one seems to understand it. I've been talking about this, like I said, since a radio show I had back in 2012. And no one all these years has ever understood it. And this is the first time for me, why it's such a bombshell, that I've actually heard somebody say it out loud, somebody with credibility say it out loud, that we fund terrorism. We fund both sides of wars, more often than not, but people just don't get it. So please understand how our country has worked under Democrat lead. The Democrat regime were downright evil. I mean, seriously, just downright evil. And I don't throw that word around very lightly, but they've used us, abused us, taken advantage of us, stolen from us for so far back that it's like so many people in this country have been brainwashed. And that's what I feel like the difference is between us and a lot of the folks in the Democrat Party, is that I feel like somehow they've been manipulated. Somehow they were easily manipulated or maybe it happened, over a very slow period of time. And now all of a sudden they just can't break through that brainwashing to see that our government has been working against us. And I get it. I was one of those people, years ago where I watched CNN 24/7 and I didn't want guns in my home. I didn't think people should ever own a gun. I thought guns were only for the police and the military. And then I had my own, awakening, my own awakening. And once you have that awakening and you see what's going on around you, you'll never go back. but there's so many people out there who have this brainwashing and they just don't see it yet. And we have to do our best to try to get through to these people and make them understand. And you can't make somebody understand. You have to hope they understand. But we've got a lot of work to do, that's for sure. Things have not been good. Good morning, Rob. Rob says, we are seeing the deep state. There's definitely a shadow government that supersedes the presidency. This will be a civil war. Very interesting you say so, Rob, because that's exactly what Glenn Beck said. And we're going to talk about that here in just a couple minutes. Allison said, the deep state is embedded in every agency. Yes, they certainly are. And Allison says, listen to Senate and House hearings, and you can learn a lot. That's why I always say I don't trust anyone in Congress. There might be maybe 2, 3, 4 people in there that I mostly trust. But in the end, I don't really trust anyone. I don't like the Republicans in Congress any more than I like the Democrats in Congress, because guess what? They all know this is going on. Every last one of them knows that this is happening, but yet they do nothing about it. They don't do anything. They don't speak out. They don't end it. And why? Because they're all getting a little bit of a paycheck because of it. So everyone is literally making money off of you and off of me. We're the only ones who aren't making money off of anyone else, right? Has anybody ever called you and said, hey, if you support this measure, we'll give you a little kickback? No, they just want to take your tax dollars to give the kickback to these people, the people who don't even need it. And I know there's a lot of people who get involved in government and get involved, want to run for Congress because they know it's a big payday. They know that they'll be easily swayed and they'll get this money the lobbyists are peddling. It's just a big, ugly situation. And I hope it ends. I don't know how it ends, but I do hope it ends. And let's see. Joe Fry, they create the problems and offer the solutions. Lori, I wonder the same thing all the time. I know highly intelligent, compassionate people to the left, as do I. It makes no sense to me. They think the same as we do about us. They do. They think we're brainwashed. We think they're brainwashed. I look around me and I think, especially with this Epstein situation, which we're getting ready to talk about, I think, my God, are we the only people seeing this? I just don't get it. Are we the only people who know what's really going on, not just in our own country, but around the world? I mean, how do people see it so differently than we do? I just don't understand how that can be possible. And I know a lot of really good people who are Democrats, and I know a lot of really good people who are atheists and who are super, super far to the left. They're still good people, but their belief system sometimes is kind of skewed. And I think it was programmed into them in some way. And we'll touch base on that before the end of the show, because we're going to talk about how the government spent $700,000 to get into the gaming industry to make sure people are a little bit more brainwashed. So that's how they do it. We used to talk about subliminal advertising, remember, back in the day? Well, they're still doing that stuff. It's just not as obvious anymore. They don't talk about it as much, but they are getting to people. There's no question about it. Paid operatives, we found out working at some of these news agencies like MSNBC, CNN, probably Fox National too. I've not heard, probably. They're all over the place, all in a giant campaign for what? To brainwash you so they can steal your money, so they can pay all of these folks. That's exactly really what it comes down to. It's all down to that. All the propaganda is aimed at keeping you in the dark so they can steal your money out from under you. You go to work every day, they take 73 cents of every dollar you earn, and that money is divvied up amongst all these NGOs, amongst Congress, amongst all the people in the Democrat cabinets, the deep state. They all get a few pennies of your dollars every single day. And that's what it's all about. It's all brainwashing to steal your money to pay these people so they can become wealthier. When you really think about it, it's a pretty darn crazy situation, isn't it? And how have we allowed this to continue on in the way that we have? Good morning, Glesna. Good morning, Glesna. So, oh man, that's frustrating to me. But either way, what's more frustrating is yesterday's Epstein file release. Good morning, Scott, because I'll tell you, I'm not as disappointed as probably some people are. I've been telling you guys for a couple days now, they are never going to release this information to us. It's just not going to happen. I'm not convinced, even though Pam Bondi is giving this directive to the FBI in New York, the Southern District FBI field office, I still just don't believe we're going to ever get the information. I don't think they're ever going to give it to her. And there's a lot of reasons why I feel that way. But, let's backtrack here. So yesterday we had these folks. I'm going to show this. I played this video at the very beginning of the show. There's no sound to this. It's just a bunch of theater taking place. Take a look here. Look how excited they are. Aren't they? Oh, look, there's Pam Bondi jumping around. Oh, we got these Epstein files. They've been sitting on her desk for a couple of days now. She said she's already looked at the files. And oh, it's shocking. It's shocking. Then we have I always forget this lady's name, Alina Haba, talking about, oh, shocking. We're going to be so shocked when we get these files.
Now
So
it's
take a
time
listen
for
to this.
accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway, we don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Cash and Pam, there will be accountability.
And we know that only one person so far has actually gone to prison over that whole scandal. It was Ghislaine Maxwell, the former lover of Jeffrey Epstein. No man so far has actually been put in prison as a result of what happened. Do you think by releasing information from these files, we are likely to see criminal actions being taken?
Absolutely.
Really?
I think it would be negligent for us not to. You have to hold individuals who are indeed rapists accountable. We have to have them tried, in my opinion. And I do believe in that. Nobody should be just dismissed. You have to have your time in court and your case will be heard. But to hide lists, to protect political friends, all of that, we don't
have to arrest who? Who are they planning to arrest? That's what I want to know. They don't even have the files. They don't even have the names. They have nothing. And I'll tell you what, I don't know what direction to think, because I know that Donald Trump is probably as disappointed as we are. Pam Bondi's probably disappointed. Kash Patel's probably really disappointed, considering that he is the director of the FBI and it's his own folks allegedly holding us up. But I'll tell you what, if Pam Bondi had these files on her desk, why did she lead us to believe that there was something of substance here? Why are these people jumping up and down? Oh, I'm so excited. Today's the day. We're going to release the files. Then they had this little book. Oh, phase 1, Epstein phase 1. There was nothing in those books. I had that information, as did many people, 5 years ago, literally 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we had those exact same flight logs. We had those exact same masseuse lists. We had the black book, the unredacted. That's what's even funnier, is that we, the people, had more information 5 years ago than what they released yesterday. I had the entire unredacted files, the unredacted black book that had all of the names, all of the addresses and phone numbers of all of these people, all of the flight logs, unredacted flight logs, years ago. Years ago. We knew the list that were of the flight logs years ago. And yet they're trying to tell us, oh, and I told you guys that yesterday, didn't I? I said exactly that. I said, they're going to release to us exactly what we already have. It's not going to be anything new. But I was kind of like, not joking, but I was kind of just saying, thinking that I hope that's not true. But yet that would be the irony of the situation, is if they only released what we already have and what we already know. And that's exactly what happened. That's why I said sometimes the world seems like a simulation to me, when that's exactly what I expected to happen. And it's exactly what did happen, except for they took the files we already have and redacted them. It makes no sense. Good morning, Adrian. And Allison says it's the deep state trying to subvert the Trump administration. It could be, it certainly likely is, Joe. Fry, they can't release the information before they put their cases together. Timing is everything. Right now, they want these individuals to be scared to death. They have them all. See, Joe, I have to disagree with you on that. The fact is that Donald Trump, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, they don't have the files. They don't have the names. They don't have any of this information. It's all being allegedly held up in the Southern District of New York's FBI office, who, of course, who do you think works there but Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter? She's a U.S. attorney who was installed into that office in when? 2015, right before Trump came in. She was a lead prosecutor in the Jeffrey Epstein case and the Ghislaine Maxwell case. So what do you think? I mean, come on. We know exactly where this information is. I watched a little video somebody sent to me last night from Glenn Beck, and it's too long to play, but you could tell he was as frustrated as the rest of us are. He also was probably expecting something, just any little bit of tidbit of information. And then he also said the same thing, like, what in the world is happening? Why did Pam Bondi sit with this file? Now anyone, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a jerk to Pam Bondi because I really do like her, but they handled this situation very, very poorly, very poorly. And I feel like almost reminiscent of the Biden administration to some degree, is how I felt yesterday. And that we, the people, we're not stupid. Don't treat us like we're stupid. Pam Bondi is not a stupid person. She's a very intelligent person. I have a lot of respect for her. But I'll tell you what, she sat there with this book, 200 pages. You know that the Epstein file is thousands of pages as long, and it should have had, video files and all these other things. They don't hand that to you in a book. Come on now. Lori says, remember, Heidi Fleiss and her client list, they released that information very quickly. Of course they did, because there were people on there they didn't like. Of course they did. And that's why we know Trump is not on the list. We know that Donald Trump is not on this list, because if Donald Trump was on the Epstein client list, they would have released that a long time ago. That would have been used against him to keep him from becoming president or even running for president, but he's not on that list. So we can rest assured of that. If he were, we would already know. Now, Adam Schiff is on that list, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second, because there's a lot going on with that guy, and that guy's going down. Allison says, because this is what the SDNY FBI said, this was everything they had. An FBI agent called Bondi and said, they are hiding files and evidence that is there. Well, Allison, I'm going to tell you something, and this is nothing against you, nothing against Pam Bondi or anyone else. Pam Bondi is not that stupid. She's a very intelligent person. I am no one. I'm just sitting here on a podcast. I am absolutely no one. And I'll tell you what, if I were the attorney general of this country and I said, I want to see the Epstein files, I want to know everything there is, and they delivered a package to me of 200 pages, I wouldn't even have to open the package up. I would immediately look at that and I would say, that's not everything. There is no way. There are only 200 pages. Now, of course, they probably sent this to her an electronic file. But either way, you look at this electronic file and you see the data there and you say, there is no way. The Epstein file would have to be thousands of pages long, thousands of pages. And you would have to look at it and say, okay, well, where are the video files? Where's the data files? Where's all this information? And so the disconnect for me is that I don't understand how Alina Habba, how Pam Bondi, how all of these people were telling us today's the day. Oh, these files, I've looked through them. They're shocking, disgusting, awful. Arrests are coming. For who? Based on what information? Are there files they just don't tell us about? I don't believe that. What in the world is happening? And Dottie says, is Pam a plant? Is she a former Democrat? I don't know. I don't blame Pam Bondi. I don't blame her. I don't understand exactly what happened here. I don't understand. The disconnect for me is I don't understand how she could look at these files on her desk and print them out and look through the files on her computer system and think that's it. I mean, didn't she see the same files we saw 5 years ago? It makes me wonder if they're just trying to appease the people. We expected something, hey, let's just give them what they already have. We're not releasing anything new. We're just going to give them the same files, but we're going to go a step further. We're going to redact the files that they all already have. Do they not know we already have these files? That's maybe confusing to me too. But I don't understand how she can say she's had these files on her desk. She's read them. It's shocking. Arrests are coming. People are going to be just bewildered when they see this information. And then they show us the information. We're like, that's old news. We already knew all that. Nothing new here. I mean, come on. Am I the only one thinking this? Like, what in the world is happening here? I had to work last night, so I was just getting little teeny tidbits here and there. So I couldn't really look into anything until around 10 p.m. And I finally did. But I knew because people were sending me stuff and I couldn't open it. I can't open video links, when I'm at work. And so therefore, I kept responding to people. I'm like, just tell me. I said, I know they didn't release anything, did they? I said, there's nothing. And people are like, no, there's nothing. You didn't miss anything. Good morning, Annette. Allison Bondi said she saw nothing of great interest in the files, but what he did was shocking. Well, we all know that. I mean, they weren't out there. Allison, I love that you are taking the side that you're taking. And again, I love your optimism. I absolutely love that about you. But in this case, I feel like we've been taken to the cleaners. We've been lied to. We've been misdirected. We were led to believe that we were going to see something that wasn't even there. And my only way of thinking about this is they promised us they were going to show us the files maybe before they knew what was there, or maybe because they knew they had to, because the American people were losing faith and we were starting to really, really shout from the rooftops that we want to see these files. So they thought, well, even though these files aren't what we wanted, let's just show them what we have, and maybe people will be happy, because there's probably some portion of the population who didn't know, that these files existed, and there's a lot of people who didn't know this, who hadn't seen these. And Allison, I have absolute faith in Trump's administration too. I do, and I have faith in Pam Bondi. I just don't understand what exactly happened here. If I were in her position, as soon as I knew, and as soon as I looked at those files, which according to her was days ago, I would have said, this is nothing. There's nothing here. And so I'm sorry, American people. I don't know why I didn't get the files, but there's nothing here. But I don't think she looked at them. I hate to say this. I think she lied to us. Maybe a white lie, but I think she lied to us. I think she told us the files were on her desk and that she looked at them when she really didn't. And then she held this big press conference and they released it to the media that, oh, we're going to release the files. I've got them on my desk. I've looked at them, blah, blah, blah. We're going to release them on this day. And everybody's going to be so shocked. It's just disgusting. Everything we're finding out. There's going to be arrests. And then all of a sudden she did open the file and she probably opened the file right about 5 minutes before we saw it. And she's like, holy cow, there is nothing here. And then somehow a whistleblower came forward and they said, oh, well, just so you know, another whistleblower. This is the second whistleblower in what, a week? Second whistleblower in a week? Another whistleblower came forward. And this whistleblower said, oh, I'm sorry, the file, you don't have the files. There's thousands of pages of files. And they're being held up in the Southern District of New York in the FBI office. And they don't want to give them to you because they don't like you guys. and so, another whistleblower, and then it took me back to the other whistleblower, maybe the same whistleblower. No one tells us anything. But remember, we talked at length about the other whistleblower earlier this week. And we said that, okay, there's a whistleblower that's come forward who has stated that generals, the FBI, the CIA, are shredding files, permanently deleting electronic files, burning, like literally burning evidence, some of that being related to the Epstein files. And, at the time, you don't really know what to think. But, this was coming from General Flynn. It was coming from Colonel McGregor. Charlie Kirk jumped on board. All these people were talking about this, leading us to believe that it really is true. And it very well could be true. And as soon as I saw what was going on and that Pam Bondi did not have the files, and in fact, the files were being held still at the FBI field office in New York, and where they handled the prosecution, by the way. That's why they have these files. And they didn't release them. I thought, maybe that's what comes back to that other whistleblower story, that they walked in and caught these people deleting, some of these files. And it really makes you wonder what exactly is going on. Mr. Parnell, it's all a psychological manipulation. Hope is a powerful tool. It sure got everybody's attention now, didn't it? And tides us over for a few more days, right? And Trump told her to release the files she received. And maybe they had, like I said earlier, they had no choice, Allison. They had no choice to release the files. Because if yesterday arrived and there were no files, then guess what? It would have looked really bad. It would have looked really bad. And there's a lot of people even calling out Trump right now. I don't blame him. He's busy. That man is working out peace deals. He's over in Istanbul working out deals with Russia. He's working out deals with Mexico over the cartels. He handed this off to Pam Bondi and to Kash Patel, and unfortunately, it was a huge failure. But what I also don't understand is Kash Patel is the director of the FBI. As the director of the FBI, can't he just go to New York and walk in the office and take the files? I mean, maybe, am I wrong in thinking that? I mean, couldn't he do that? He is their boss. Couldn't he just fire them all? Technically, couldn't he just go to New York, put a padlock on the door, and tell them all to get out? I don't see why he couldn't. He's their boss. Makes no sense to me. And if he can't do it, we know Donald Trump can. Someone needs to get their little behind out to New York City. They need to march up to the door of that Southern District of New York field office for the FBI, and they need to make everyone leave. They need to make sure they're not taking any evidence with them. And then they need to get to the bottom of what exactly is going on here, because now it's become a bigger story. It started out that we were upset because we needed to see the Epstein client list. Now, all of a sudden, we have a situation where an FBI field office is disobeying the commands of the U.S. Attorney General, who is the top. Remember, the U.S. Attorney General, that's the top law enforcement official in our country, right under Donald Trump. The top law enforcement official is Pam Bondi. And I do absolutely have trust in her. And then we have Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, who I also have trust in. How did he not know that these files, he doesn't even have access to these files. He doesn't even have access to the files. It's insane. And let's see, Charles says, maybe additional intentional anxiety is being inflicted on the guilty to watch them squirm. I think that's absolutely true. We've heard reports that Bill Gates has been lobbying the Trump administration, for days, they said. This was a quote from somebody in the White House, to not release those names. Well, Bill Gates, I mean, we already know you're on that list. His wife told everyone, we don't need this list to tell us anything about it. And Joe Fry says, like Colonel Adams said, the people don't need to see everything. Well, you're right. We don't need to see everything. But I think we need to see the list of client names. I think that's a due diligence they owe us, and that they owe to the victims. And there are certainly things that could potentially harm our national security or our relationships with other countries. And we do have to be very careful with that. But we can't protect criminals, and we especially can't protect pedophiles. That's what it comes down to. We're not asking to see a list of consenting adults having, relationships. We don't care about that. These are a list of names of people who have exploited children, minors who are rapists. Literally, they've literally raped people. And so we absolutely need to see that list. Yes, and that says client names. Allison, there are so many not honoring and fighting Trump's executive orders. You're right. There are. And we know, I listened to that Glenn Beck video. You'll have to see that when you have an opportunity, if you haven't already seen it. And he says, this is turning into a civil war. It's turning into civil war. We have an FBI field office who is dishonoring their chief commander. They're not honoring our president. They're not respecting his orders. He ordered these files to be released. They're not respecting the director, their own director of the FBI, Kash Patel. So they are going against us, and something has to be done. And I can guarantee you something will be done. And Jay says, we live in a world where nothing is cut and dry, nor is it simple. Nothing is ever as it seems or as it should be. And Jay, that's exactly kind of what Elon Musk said. He said, people have to be understanding because we don't get the power like immediately. It's not a situation where, okay, now you're president, all the power is yours. It doesn't work that way. It should work that way, but we have all of these different branches. These people hate Donald Trump. They hate us. And they don't want to comply to his executive orders. They don't want to comply to Pam Bondi. They don't want to comply to Kash Patel. And Jay says, given the names and even potential names, the powerful people on the list, we will never know. Greatest cover-up of our history. It could be. It could be. And Dottie says, Kash has claimed he has seen them all. Well, there's a lot of people who have seen the list of client names. There's a lot. As a matter of fact, there's a guy, I think his name is Matt Wallace. He's a journalist. He knows the names. And he said, I read a post of his on X early this morning, and he said, you know what? I know the names. And if they don't release the names to Pam Bondi, I'm going to release the names to the public. So there are people out there who know the client names. There are. And maybe the names that we already knew 5 years ago, maybe that's it. Maybe that list of names is it. And, but we need to get to the bottom and find out exactly who these people are. Because, you can look at a list of names and yes, they might be on the flight logs. Yes, they may have visited Epstein Island, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they exploited minors or raped anyone. So, we need to know who did what. Yes, these people were there. We're gonna talk about that here in a second. Good morning, Joe. Scott. Good morning, Scott. Why are the people who were forced to work on the island not coming forward? Probably because they fear for their lives. And, the island is no more. They bulldozed that island over. There's actually new people who live there, who built a new home there. Nothing that was there before is there now. A lot of it burned. Then they bulldozed it over, everything. And then these people moved in and built this enormous home, far larger than Epstein's home was. I just took a look at it this morning. Good morning, Shelley. If you think we're frustrated, think about those victims. That's what it's all about, isn't it, Shelley? It's about the victims. It is all about the victims. What about the victims? Don't they get to see their day? Don't they get to name, or they're not allowed to name. And that's what's funny. They're the victims. They're not allowed. They have gag orders. They're not allowed to name the people that harmed them. And so it's up to the Trump administration to do that. Otherwise, we can just guess. That's all we can do. And Lori says, well, he better not leave his house if he truly knows them. There is a target on his back. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of people, Lori, who know. I don't know. I posted on Facebook last night and on X the list that I have, which is a list many of you have seen that has a lot of names on it, but we don't know that those people exploited children or minors. We just don't know that. We know they visited Epstein Island, but that's about all we know. And we've known those names for a very long time. And Charles says, maybe it's time to talk to Maxwell. Pardon, reduce sentence, maybe. But I don't think I don't think that she's going to talk. I don't know, maybe. She hasn't talked yet. Epstein's gone. But I think that she knows she's a dead person walking if she gives away any of those names. There's a lot of very powerful people who are going to be the ones named that did take advantage of children. So that's what it all comes down to. Again, it's a different story going to an Epstein party versus taking advantage of a child, which is exactly what these people have done. Dottie, my comment on Kash with a K refuses to post. Well, that's strange. Well, who knows? Old Zuck probably has some kind of a restriction against us. Oh no, you're on X. So I don't know. I don't know why that would be. Adrian, it's criminal that the victims have a gag order. It is criminal. It absolutely is criminal. There's a lot of criminal things going on in this situation, and I'll tell you, part of the problem is Adam Schiff. That man, believe it or not, has a lot of power. And, I tried to play a video yesterday of him and Kash Patel talking, and I'm going to play that again, and then we're going to talk about how Adam Schiff is related. I tried to play this yesterday. I couldn't get the play right because I was having some technical issues. We're going to talk about Adam Schiff and how he may have possibly been one of Epstein's largest, most frequented clients. So we'll figure that out here in just a moment. But let's play this video first.
Trust. This is someone who lacks the character to do this job, someone who lacks the integrity to do this job. We know that. Our Republican colleagues know that. The only qualification Kash Patel has to be FBI director is that when everyone else in the first Trump administration said, no, I won't do that, that crosses moral, ethical, and legal lines, Kash Patel said, sign me up. In the first Trump administration, as we are seeing in the second, you rise to the level of your sycophancy, and no one is a bigger or more dangerous sycophant than Kash Patel. This political hack does not deserve to be in this building. He can't do the job. He won't protect the public. He will misuse the resources of the Bureau. He will weaponize it against the president's political opponents rather than protecting the safety, the public safety of the American people.
Adam Schiff is the worst criminal in Congress in the last 250 years. And what broke that we're going to talk about right now is Adam Schiff met with a whistleblower. Adam Schiff went to the podium day after day after day saying, I know nothing about this. We're not going to discuss it. We're going to protect it. And then Adam Schiff, led the prosecution of the impeachment trial in the Senate of President Donald Trump. Talk about someone who was conflicted out of the game because he was part of the hoax that brought Charmella in, manufactured that false accusation, and then peddled it out to the world, and he continued, not surprising, he's lied about almost everything in his life. But now he lied just to set up a presidential impeachment. And that's what I was talking about, these disinformation campaigns. And then he should be investigated because he lied to the world about his interactions with Charmella, who was a whistleblower, and I can't stress it enough, that started a presidential impeachment. Now, your history is way better than mine, but I can't remember the last time a president was actually impeached. It's a significant process and escalation, and it's reserved for the time when it actually shows a crime, not when it shows the manufacture of fake information to show a fake crime. The guy that found and manufactured the evidence with Charmella was the prosecutor in the case against the target of the investigation. That is the ultimate, from a prosecutorial standpoint, conflict of interest. But he knew what he was doing, and he thought he would never get exposed. And I think thanks to, I think it was John Solomon and his fantastic reporting, we now see what I've been saying for years, that I thought he met with him.
Oh, that's not all we know. That's not all we know. Trust me, we got a bombshell here in a second. Good morning, Rich. Kash is definitely the little chihuahua that you want to let out the front door. You better believe it. Good morning, Robert. Annette, yes, but what are they going to do about Adam Schiff? Oh, they're going to do something. They're already working on it, Annette. They're already working on it. Kash Patel has released this information through these different audits that he's done of FBI files. Guess what he found out? Adam Schiff emailed Jeffrey Epstein 256 times. 256 times. Now, why would Adam Schiff email Jeffrey Epstein 256 times? And eventually we'll find out. Eventually we'll have that information. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot going on here. This is just the tip. I mean, just think Donald Trump's only been president for a month. It's only, what is today? Today is the 28th of February. Tomorrow's March 1st. So therefore, he just came into office on January 20th. So think about that. That's how long he's been in office. It's insane. And look how much we've accomplished. Look how much we found out. And yes, we have a stumbling block with the Epstein files. We will work through it. And Robert says, here is the real issue. Congress has immunity from deliberately not telling the truth. In other words, encouraging lying. And that's true, Robert. And that's something we need to work on. We need to work on that. Lori says, I saw a video of one of the bartenders from the island where he had people asking for virgin drinks and he thought they were truly asking for drinks. Crazy, isn't it? Robert says the honeypot info. Yes, that was the situation. We've talked about that a couple times this week in which Now, James Comey is going to be the one to get in trouble for that because he's the other one. I think Adam Schiff and James Comey are number 2, 1 and 2 on Kash Patel and Dan Bongino's list because we just saw the obvious reasons for Adam Schiff, knowing that he also emailed Jeffrey Epstein 256 times, according to FBI records. And then we have James Comey with the honeypot scheme, where he attempted to bring 2 FBI agents, very pretty FBI agents, use tactics of flirting and using their womanly ways to get deep into the Trump campaign in 2016. All coming to light, isn't it? It's all coming to light. And then we find out James Comey's daughter, Maureen, is a United States prosecuting attorney. And guess where she's located? Once again, in New York City at the local FBI office. You know, what can you say? That's where she's at. She was involved in the Jeffrey Epstein case. She was involved in the Ghislaine Maxwell case. And therefore, we know now why these files are not being released, why they're probably being deleted, shredded, burned, so that we never know this information. They have people to protect, and I think they're going to protect them at all costs. And it could end up, it could get very serious because, you know, I consider it to be treason, quite honestly. If the president issues an order, if our top law enforcement agent, you know, Attorney General Pam Bondi issues an order, they have to comply. And as you guys know, I'm not going to read the letter again because you've probably already read it. She wrote them a pretty scathing letter to Kash Patel. And it was very nice to him, but scathing to the folks that are holding her back. And she gave them until 8 a.m. today. That's actually Eastern time, 8:30, 9:30, so 30 minutes ago. They should have had those files on her desk. So did they comply? Some of you guys may know or may not know since I've been talking. I don't know. But they had until 8 a.m. Eastern time today to put those files on her desk, every last paper, every last file, every video, every audio recording of the Epstein files to be on her desk today at 8 a.m. Did they do it? And if they didn't, what comes next? I'll tell you that. But there's a lot of people who know what's going on. And Annette says, I sure hope so. He needs to go to jail. Jay says, if I was Kash, I'd take some loyal agents and surprise that office and walk everyone out. I would too. I would go. I would knock on, I would immediately leave to go to New York. Just like I said a few minutes ago, I would go to that office. I would kick them all out, padlock that door, and take those files. And not all those people should be fired. Every last one of them should be fired. And I think we're going to see a lot of action taking place if those files were not on Pam Bondi's desk this morning. But again, if you're just joining the show, you can go back and watch from the beginning or go back about 15 minutes ago. Well, we started talking about this actually 30 minutes ago at 8 o'clock about exactly what took place here. Theater, just theater. That's all it was yesterday. It was just theater. And it's really a shame because I don't feel like the American people deserve to be played. And that's what happened to us yesterday. You know, Pam Bondi, she knew there was nothing in those files. Kash Patel knew there was nothing in those files. And it was just all theater. And I think we're kind of, as Americans, we're past theater, aren't we? We're smarter than that. We're way smarter than that. I like Pam Bondi. I trust her. Same with Kash Patel. They've got a second chance. I think all of us Americans are going to give them a second chance. And then if we don't see these files and we don't see these names, then I think things are going to change, aren't they? Don't you feel like things are going to change for you if you've been promised disclosure and you don't get it? You're going to start wondering why, aren't you? And let's see, Robert, until the traitors get life or death penalty, nothing changes. You got that right. Charles, go into that FBI office like they went into Mar-a-Lago. Isn't that the truth? Joe, good morning, Joe. You are assuming that those files haven't already been destroyed. No, Joe, we've already talked about that today because as I said, there was a whistleblower we've talked about a couple of times this week who said the files were being destroyed. This whistleblower claims they walked in and saw the files being destroyed, that there were FBI, CIA agents, and potentially a couple of generals involved, and they were burning evidence, destroying, shredding paper files, and permanently deleting electronic files. So there's a very good possibility, if that whistleblower is true, if and General Flynn believes it to be true, Colonel McGregor believes it to be true, a lot of people jumping on board with this theory. If that's the case, then we'll probably never know. They'll probably have deleted or got rid of everything that we would need. And then we're going to see what really happens to these folks. Robert says, didn't Pam Bondi cut Epstein deals in Florida? I don't, you know what? I don't know. But I will tell you something. I'm going to play this quick video for you. I've not seen this before. And it's a video about Wired. We all know Wired has done a great job exposing a lot of information. And some of that information that they have exposed, gosh, I hope it's on here. Yeah, here it is. And what they did, you know, when we talk before the show ends about Robert Crooks, or Thomas Robert, is it Thomas Robert Crooks? The Pennsylvania shooter, and how he potentially has another, you know, what had an accomplice that day. And they used the same type of data Wired did as they did with Thomas Crooks, some investigators did. And so what Wired did is Wired took phone data. So everywhere you go, as you know, we talk about this a lot, your phone tracks everything you do. You know how you get those little ads that pop up on your phone? When those ads pop up on your phone, it pings your phone. And so therefore your phone triangulates on a certain tower. And there are people out there who are constantly collecting all the data. And these are third parties, it's not the phone company. They're constantly collecting the ping data. So that way, anybody within, you know, a certain region of Epstein's Islands, you know, they have their cell phones, they're getting pinged constantly. And those pings triangulate to a tower in that area. And then people can go and they can pull the reports of all the pings that take place in that area. And then they can trace those pings to where those phone numbers went. They'll get a list of the phone numbers that pinged, and then they can trace those numbers from originating calls. So we're going to look at this video from Wired, because this is kind of mind-blowing. And it just goes to show how much information is out there and how many people know. We know who is at the island. We know who Epstein associated with. We just don't know which one of them exploited children. And that's what the difference is. And that's the part that matters. I don't even care who went to Epstein's Island. I mean, I do, but that's not the big deal. I want to know who it is that harmed the children. But take a look at this video.
Tracked the cell phones of visitors to Jeffrey Epstein's private island, where he and associates allegedly sexually assaulted countless women and underage girls. The company behind the tracking, Near Intelligence, left their data exposed online. Wired found it. Near Intelligence is a data broker with ties to U.S. defense contractors. The maps that they generated show how the company diligently tracked Epstein's visitors' movements over a 3-year period of time. The maps also document a trail of data that could possibly lead back to the very places where Epstein's visitors work and live. For example, the maps show how devices moved from the Ritz-Carlton on nearby St. Thomas Island to a specific dock at a nearby marina. From that marina, the data shows the exact route that visitors took to get to Jeffrey Epstein's island. Then, once they were on the island, Near Intelligence tracked his visitors' devices as they wandered around his villa and spent time on the many beaches scattered across his 71-acre property. The data also revealed where the visitors came from. The cell phone signals point to more than 166 locations throughout the U.S., plus cities in Ukraine, the Cayman Islands, Australia, and more. In the U.S., for instance, Near's data pinpoints people to homes in 80 different cities. That includes mansions and gated communities in both Michigan and Florida, homes in Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket in Massachusetts, a nightclub in Miami, and the sidewalk across the street from Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in New York City. The data compiled by Near captures these movements as far back as July 2016. The data collection ended on July 6, 2019. That's the exact day of Jeffrey Epstein's arrest. Near Intelligence sources its data from advertising exchanges. These are companies that interact with billions of devices as users browse the web and move around the world. The way this works is that before a targeted advertisement appears on an app or a website, your phone sends information about you to real-time bidding platforms and ad exchanges. That data frequently includes location information. While most advertisers will use this data to inform their decisions about whether or not to serve you an ad, companies like Near Intelligence will actually siphon off that information, repackage it, analyze it, and sell it. So officially, this data is only supposed to be used for targeted advertising. But Near Intelligence has previously been caught providing this data to the U.S. military. This usually happens through a maze of obscure marketing companies, cutouts, and conduits for defense contractors. Our reporting shows how the machinery developed to service all targeted advertisements is allowing these contractors, companies, and governments to engage in mass surveillance. Absent any laws to stop this from happening, we're going to continue to see ad tech be used in unintended ways. So while this data provides us with crucial information about Epstein's Island, what does it mean for everyone else who owns a smartphone? The short answer is this. Anyone with a phone can be tracked just like the visitors to Epstein's island. But that doesn't actually mean that there aren't steps that you can take to protect your privacy. You can make sure that you only...
All right, so you can't turn your phone off. I tell you guys that all the time. You can't turn your phone off. It tracks your location no matter where you go. It's just a facade when it says, "Oh, turn off my location services." It doesn't really work that way. Your phone's always on. It always listens to you. It always takes photos of you and video of you. That's why cell phones aren't allowed in the Pentagon. They had to put them in a little lockbox before you go in, because even cell phones there's one phone out there. Another story that I know Obama had. It was one of the old. I bought one just out of curiosity when he had one, and it was the old BlackBerry World phone, and it had no camera. It had no way anyone could listen to you. It was pretty interesting, and that was the only phone allegedly ever made that in which you couldn't be spied on, and where you could actually turn off your location services. Now, why did Obama need that? I guess every president would. But anyway, Allison says, you have faith that we will eventually see people prosecuted, just not in the timeline we would like. You mean like 5 years ago? That was my timeline when people should be prosecuted. If they, in fact, deleted the files, there may never be prosecutions. We may never know who's on that list. And there's apparently a lot of people who are willing to go down on the ship to save whoever it is that is on that list. And it's not Donald Trump, because if it were Donald Trump, guess what? We already know what would have happened. We would have known that list. It would have been released a long time ago. All those other people would have been sacrificial lambs just so they could get Trump's name out. But when I was watching that Wired video and they said Michigan, I immediately thought Pritzker, because he has a home in Michigan. But there's so many other people in Michigan as well. But that was kind of the first thing that popped in my mind. Robert says Hillary also only used BlackBerry phones. Yeah, I still have that BlackBerry phone. Of course, I haven't used the BlackBerry in forever. But BlackBerry, as far as I know, is the only one that has made a phone that can't be tracked, that can't be spied on. So pretty interesting there. But either way, again, we're going to move on here in a second. I just want to go back to reiterate my two biggest disappointments is, number one, my biggest disappointment was that I feel that it was all theater. They faked this out. I'm only gonna put up with that once, only one time, and that's it. Now they better mean business. I didn't expect them to release the information. I wasn't as disappointed as some people were. But when Pam Bondi, I do absolutely feel like she lied. I still like her. I'm not giving up on her, but I do feel like she lied. I don't believe for 1 second she read those files and then put on this big crazy show. She better not have. If she truly read those files and then put on this big show, oh, let's invite all these influencers, to the White House and give them copies of phase 1 of the MC files for everybody, just open it up and go, we saw the unredacted version of this 5 years ago. Why are you giving us this? Biggest disappointment in history. Or she lied and she did not read the files like she said she did. And she had no idea that there was nothing in there. These files, again, they were released 5 years ago, unredacted. So then they give us a file 200 pages redacted of the same information we already know. Somebody needs to be held accountable for that huge blunder. But we're going to give Pam Bondi and Kash Patel a second chance, and we're going to find out where we go from here. Now, the second big disappointment is, of course, the Southern District of New York City and their FBI office. I mean, this is just not acceptable. It is absolutely not acceptable. We know what went down in New York City. We know that the Southern District had those files. We know the local FBI field office had those files. Do they still have them? Don't know. And Mary says, I'm tired of Jeffrey Epstein junk. You mean you're tired of hearing about it, or you just want them to release everything so we can be done with it? There's so many other things that going on in this country. I also hate to focus so much on Epstein, but the fact is, Mary, is that, and I know you know this, is that there are pedophiles in our country who have taken advantage of children, and they're high-ranking people who are making our laws, potentially, people in other areas of influence, and these people continue on every single day. There's 250 victims that have never had an opportunity for any retribution at all, and they have to deal with this for the rest of their lives. And anyone who takes advantage of a child, they need to be prosecuted. They needed to be dealt with. But the bigger issue here, is just the protection of these high-ranking people. That's the bigger issue. Outside of the victims, it's the bigger issue that here we have these people in our country who are high-ranking members of our society, and because they're high-ranking members of the society, their names cannot be released. If it was you or me or people we know, those names would have been out there a long time ago. It's just a lot of ridiculous cover-up, maybe the greatest cover-up we will ever experience. But they did the same thing with the Hillary files. Hillary, gosh, who knows where the Hillary files are? I'd like to see those next. But with the JFK files, remember, they told, was it Pam Bondi or Anna Paulina Luna? They said that we gave you all the files, you've got everything there is. Then they found out a couple days later, oh, mistake, we really have 2,400 more files that we just didn't give you. So it's the same story, same old story. And you know what? We'll keep up with it. We'll talk about it next week. I'm going to be very disappointed for a couple of days because I feel like we were either lied to or intentionally led on, one or the other. Pam Bondi lied to us, or she intentionally led us on to believe that she had something she didn't have, just because they had to present something after building it up. So one of those two things happened, or maybe both in conjunction with each other. But we'll find out. We're gonna see what happens today. The FBI should have handed over, the New York Southern District should have handed over those files by 9 or 8 a.m. Eastern time. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, lots more to talk about. Of course, General, I always have such a hard time saying this name, McInerney said that, yes, there's a lot of evidence in the FBI files that Thomas Crooks had an accomplice in Butler, Pennsylvania that day for the Trump attempted assassination. Now, we've kind of talked about this from day one, haven't we? Now, I've got my own guesses as to who that accomplice was, but they said there's lots of evidence that points to an accomplice. Now, I've got to be very careful saying this. I don't want to get sued. That's for sure. But back in the time, it wasn't me saying it. It was hearing it from other people. And so they talked a lot about Matthew Urich. And the reason why is because his van, he owned the white van that was seen there in Butler, Pennsylvania that day. You guys have probably heard me talk about it before. He was from Arizona. He owned an explosives company. And guess what? Thomas Crooks, what did he have? He had explosives in the back of his car. And remember in the beginning, they told us that was his van. Because remember, the police took the van and towed it off. They told us there were explosives in the van. Well, we thought that was the van that belonged to Crooks. Well, then later we found out he actually drove a little white car, and there were explosives in the trunk of that car. And so then it left a lot of questions completely unanswered. Okay, so why did you take the van? And then why did we think that van belonged to Crooks to begin with? And then we find out that van, a journalist who took photos and video of the van and had the license plate number, looked up that information, and it came back to Urich out of Arizona, who owns an explosives company. And people said that he was also arrested that day. Well, not people said. Originally people said. Then I was able to back it up and see that police said he was arrested that day. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to tell us why he was arrested or what his involvement was. But here he drove all the way from Arizona to Butler, Pennsylvania in that white van. And it just happens to be the day that Crooks attempts to assassinate Donald Trump. It just happens to be that Crooks has these explosives in his car. And it just happens to be the day that Urich's van is towed away by police, but never discussed again, never talked about again. And there was a journalist who went out, and I have a video, I'll have to find that video, but the journalist went out and he did exactly what Wired did. And he was able to purchase third-party data that showed all the phone numbers that pinged in the area of Crooks' home. And when he did this, he found out that there were a couple of FBI agents whose phones pinged, like literally almost at the door of Crooks' house. And so that led us to believe that there was some type of government involvement. And then you have the whistleblower, who I really don't believe, but came forward and said, Governor Josh Shapiro was involved in the attempted assassination. Now, Donald Trump believes Joe Biden was involved in the assassination. He's talked about it. He's released that information. We've talked about it on this show, and now we have General McInerney. I know I'm not saying that name right, McInerney, saying the same thing, that there was an accomplice. They found through these FBI files under Kash Patel that there was an accomplice. We all knew, isn't it more validation? Stacy, good morning, Stacy. Tim Tebow, as an anti-trafficking group, would like to hear more from him. I would too. I would love to hear more from him. You know, he seems like a fantastic guy. Good morning, Darlene. I don't think Pam Bondi lied. I do think that there are forces trying to make her look bad. Maybe she never actually saw the unrelated files. What I don't understand is if we already have the files, why do we care what they release? Well, here's I'll recap that for you, Darlene, because we talked about this, quite extensively right after 8 o'clock. And the reason why I feel that she lied is because she said that she had the files on her desk. They were the complete files. She read through them already. Now, again, I'm not an attorney general, but if anybody gave me these files, I would look at this and I would say, okay, this is a stack about an inch high. The Epstein files should be, boxes and boxes of files, not a little inch high notebook. There should be boxes and boxes of files, video clips, etc. She had to have known from the beginning this wasn't the beginning. But then, of course, she had that binder that said phase 1. And so, then they led us to believe this big, unveiling was going to happen. You're going to get the list. It's going to be shocking. There's going to be arrests coming. All of these things are going to happen. And then it was a big nothing. All she did was release the same files we received 5 years ago, but they took the opportunity to redact all the information we already had. So it would be like me handing you a report that I gave you 5 years ago, redacting all the information and then acting like it's such a big deal. Oh, I'm going to give you this really big report today. It's going to blow your mind. And you look at it and it's all blacked out. You're thinking, you gave me this report 5 years ago without the black lines. So something is not right here. And again, it's not against her. I like her. I love Pam Bondi. I think she's going to do a fantastic job for us. But either they put on some theater for us or she lied. She said she saw those files beforehand. If she did, she shouldn't have made a big deal out of it. She just should have said, you know what? We don't have all the files. And here's the thing. She didn't write that letter to Kash Patel until yesterday. So if she had seen the files prior to yesterday and knew that all of this information that she expected to be there was not there, why didn't she write the letter a few days ago when she looked at the files? Why did she wait until yesterday to write that letter? That's what makes me think that she never looked at the files to begin with, that she saw it yesterday right about the same time everybody else did. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I know that Anna Paulina Luna asked Pam Bondi to release the files right away. They wanted to all look at them together. So maybe that's what happened. Maybe she never read the files. Maybe she planned on seeing them with everybody else and didn't realize there wasn't anything there, even though I don't know how she could have realized there was nothing there because we all would have known. And I'm not trying to go against Pam Bondi. Again, I like her. I think she's going to do a fantastic job, but I don't know. And Allison said she never said complete files. Well, Allison, I promise you, she did say complete files. I promise you on that. She thought she had all the files. She had no idea that the FBI held files back. Neither did Kash Patel. And we know that because Kash Patel released the statement, as did Pam Bondi. And they both very clearly stated that they thought they had all of the files, but they didn't have all the files. And she has promised in her letter that Kash Patel will also have access to these files. So there's a lot going on. Darlene says that all makes total sense. I didn't realize she said she had them. Yes, she did say she had them. And now she didn't say she was going to release everything, or maybe she did, yesterday. But either way, it was a big disappointment for a lot of people. I think they're going to have one more chance to release the real names. And I'm not talking about flight logs or the little black book or the masseuse names or all the stuff we've had for 5 years. I'm talking about they need to tell us we were prosecuting Epstein. We did prosecute Elaine Maxwell, because they were trafficking children. Who did they traffic these children to? If it was any other case, we would already know, wouldn't we? These people would already be listed as sex offenders. They'd have it been investigated. None of these things have happened. These people are being protected. And I'm not saying Pam Bondi is protecting them or Donald Trump or Kash Patel. I absolutely do believe the story that it's being held up in the Southern District in New York, and that those files could have potentially been deleted. We may never know, but I can promise you, Pam Bondi will keep us up to date. I do have faith in her, and she will keep us up to date. But I do absolutely strongly feel that either she lied to us about reading the files beforehand, or for whatever reason she's dingbatty and thought that she had new information. I don't know. I don't really understand. There's my brain can't wrap around it. I'm not the only one. You can go out there and read a lot of other people have the same opinion that I do, because we're all like, what? When you work in this business and you're dealing with news all the time, do you have all the news or do you not have it all? Do you have all the data files or do you not have it all? Trust me, she knew. So anyway, enough about that. We've been talking about that quite a bit today. Most of the show, actually. So you guys can all go back if you want to hear some of that. And Adrian said on her desk, yes, the full files wouldn't have it fit on her desk unless it was digital. And I'm sure she did receive it as a digital file. I'm sure she did. But the minute she started reading it and going through it, she would have known that this is not. And then they were talking about going through and taking out all the victims' names. Well, they didn't even release anything that had victims' names in it, other than those 2 testimonies. And those have already been out for a long time. So I don't really understand what exactly took place. Or maybe she was led to believe that she did have all the files. And she thought, oh, we are actually releasing all the files. I don't know. It might be one of the biggest mysteries we've ever faced in this country. But I'm just asking you, don't give up hope. Let's trust Pam Bondi a little bit longer. Kash Patel, they will get it together, and we will get some answers. I have no doubt about that. We can't give up yet. And so anyway, some of the other things I wanted to get into very quickly, because I've got to run soon. $700,000 of your taxpayer money, the DHS used to spy on gamers. Now, whether that was your children, your nephews, you yourself plays video games. Well, $700,000 went into the government spying. They wanted to know what games were using right-wing extremism. And then they wanted to make sure that these gaming companies were using DEI initiatives. They wanted to make sure that they were including DEI material in video games. It just goes to show that there is no level that they will stoop to try to reach people and brainwash people into their ridiculous DEI objectives. And the gaming industry is certainly it's not invulnerable from that, unfortunately. Trump, as you guys probably know, extradited. Did you hear this? 29 high-ranking cartel members from Mexico into the United States. This took place yesterday. 29 high-ranking cartel leaders extradited, and it was the largest extradition in one day Mexico has ever completed. So that goes to show our special operations forces working very well hand in hand with the Mexican government in getting these cartel leaders away from their groups here in the United States to face charges. Absolutely unbelievable. And not only that, but here's something else interesting is that Donald Trump, I'm always talking about how he's paving the way for us to literally go after cartels. He first called them terror organizations. They are now officially deemed as a terror organization. Canada followed suit, also deeming them a terror organization. Well, yesterday, he also wrote an executive order that lifted the constraints. So therefore, right now, if you're a commander of one of our military units, or military branches, you have to operate within certain constraints. You can't just go out and start fighting, with another country or with another group of people. Well, he lifted those constraints. So now we're going to have a lot more ability, a lot more freedom to go out and interact with the non-conventional, I don't know what word to use, not enemy, but it's clear that we can go into Syria and fight ISIS, right? Because they're a terror group, we're going to go in there and we're going to go fight them because that's our due diligence to protect our country, our national security, as well as the world by going over to Syria and fight ISIS. Well, now that he has relaxed these constraints, we're able to go after more non-traditional groups of people, which would, of course, include the cartels. Not that I'm wording that very well, but that is what I'm trying to get out. That's what I'm trying to get out. Non-conventional battlefields, which exactly is what's happening over in Mexico. So I think we've talked about most of everything I was planning to talk about yesterday. Starmer, of course, from the UK, Keir Starmer visited the White House, and the White House flew the British flag upside down because our relations with Europe are not good right now. They're not good, and then that's going to unfold over the coming days, coming weeks. We'll be talking about that. Obama, do you know Obama was charging taxpayers $2.6 million a year simply to use his name in Obamacare? So every year when we all refer to Obamacare, Obama was getting a royalty of $2.6 million every single time since the year 2010. And so that he racked up $39 million of your taxpayer money simply because his plan was named Obamacare. And we had to pay him royalties for using his name. Now that should be criminal, shouldn't it? That should be criminal. The FAA talking about canceling Verizon's, I think it's a $2.4 billion contract. You know, it was, believe it or not, this happened back in what was his name? Sorry, I just dropped my microphone thing. That happened back in, I think was it Dan Quayle put that plan into place? It was a long time ago. And when he put that plan into place, it hasn't been updated since. So what's happening is our air traffic controllers are using the same antiquated system that they've used from day one. It's not been updated. And so therefore, is that leading to some of these, problems we're seeing? I don't know. But either way, Elon Musk has said that he is going to donate Starlink units to air traffic controllers. And so hopefully that will bridge that connection. Apparently, the connection they have right now using Verizon is not working well. And they're losing contact. They can't always hear. We've heard a lot of recent stories about planes landing and they're trying to communicate with the towers, but they can't get through. The towers can't hear them. They can't hear the towers, and that's being blamed on these antiquated systems. And so therefore, when we start using these Starlinks, that's going to boost communication. And he's doing it for free, I should add in. Elon Musk is sending these Starlink units to air traffic controllers for free. So people are like, oh, he's trying to make so much money on this situation. No, he's giving it to them for free. In fact, he gives out a lot of free Starlinks to people all around the world who need them. As a matter of fact, back when I was out canvassing for Donald Trump in Georgia, those 42 days I spent in Georgia, I was up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and there was a lot of times, just about every day at one point or another, there was no cell phone signal. And when you're doing this, we were working for America PAC, Elon Musk Super PAC. And so we would be out there and they give you an app to use. And as you're going to different people's houses and talking to them, you've got to get this app out. You're mapping where you're going. You're looking at addresses. It tells you where you go next. It tells you who lives there. A lot of data about, different people, houses you're visiting. But you can't do anything without the app. And so there were so many places we went where the app didn't work. Do you know Elon Musk came out with a program where we could have all stopped into a local field office and picked up a Starlink device to take with us? Now, we didn't do that. We managed, and the field office was pretty far away from where we were. But I thought that was absolutely amazing that he gave us all the option of picking up a mobile Starlink device so that we could go out and get the vote out, the early vote out for Donald Trump. So, this guy means business. He means business. And I think we've all got to appreciate what he's doing for the American people. Robert says, yes, I heard that about Obama getting paid for the use of his name. It's crazy, isn't it, that he's getting paid for the use of his name? I mean, that just goes to show the people in this country that want to take advantage of us. That's all it is. They just want to take advantage of us. There was something else I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully I can find it really quick because it was something that I thought was pretty crazy. And of course, I probably won't find it. We'll probably have to save it for next week. I save these different little screenshots of things to talk about. And one of them this morning, when I went to look for it, I couldn't find it. So I guess we'll have to talk about that next week. I've only got one more thing for you guys today. And this is, of course, our favorite person talking about what horrible people they are, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. We're just a bunch of Nazis.
Forward on that. We're going to need your voice there, because I would just end with this. And we're seeing it in these town halls. That charismatic leader's not going to come there. I see the pundits on TV. What's wrong with the Democratic Party? What's wrong is our country's being stole by fascists and Nazis, and we're trying to do all we can to try and do that. But we need to use our...
I mean, this guy, can you believe him? That's what they think of us. We're all just a bunch of Nazis, aren't we? He would rather protect the Epstein files. He would rather protect these DEI initiatives. He doesn't care about us. We're all just a bunch of Nazis. All right, guys. Let's see, Darlene. What does it cost to have a Starlink? I have a Starlink here at the house, and I paid. There's different prices. It depends. They have different specials and that type of thing. I paid $300 for the Starlink unit, and then my service is $120 a month for my Starlink. I don't use it that often. I have 2 other internet services here, and I don't have it installed in the right place yet. So it does work in part of the house, but not where I'm at now. I have a T-Mobile like home internet box here that I use, and then at the other part of the house there's some other internet service that I don't use. And so my son uses that one. So, I like Starlink. For me, it hasn't worked out as well as I had hoped it would work out, but I think it may be just the location I have it. I think I maybe need to lift it up a little bit and move it, because I would love to use Starlink for everything. I pay for it every month, and I keep telling myself I've got to figure out how to get it installed a little bit better so it'll work for me. So we'll work on that. But I do think the Starlink is a fantastic system. Good morning, Pam. Robert, yeah, oh, yes, you said you heard about that Obama getting paid. All right, guys. Well, that's about it for me today. I had one other thing to talk about. Can't find it. Don't remember what it was. So we'll talk about that on Monday. Must not have been important. But I do hope you guys have a really great weekend. Another couple beautiful days. We might be in for some more bad weather here next week, or going into the following week. I hope not. I hope we're done with storms. I hope we're done with crazy weather. But we're going to watch and see what happens with Pam Bondi's office, what happens with Kash Patel. We will have probably so much to talk about on Monday. It will make our minds spin. Anyway, I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Have a great weekend, everyone.